I worked at the Christian Missionary Radio Station as a journalist. I went out, got the news, came back, put it together. I did a news magazine, 30-minute program called Window on the World. And that was a survey of everything's happening in Liberia, in Africa, and then the rest of the world. So when the war came to Liberia in 1990, our government began just giving one side of the story, you know, how government was defeating the rebels and they were doing everything. I said, no, that's not right. That's propaganda. Only one side of the story. If we are going to be a Christian station, we must be the eyes and ears of the people. So I began giving the other side of the story, but that was not very popular with government. And they began sending people at Elwa trying to get my
Elwa's in radio station.
my contact address, you know. In other words, there was a boundary on my head. So we kept on going until the middle of 1990, which was July 2nd. I was cut off. The rebel took over our area of town in Gainesville. And then I couldn't get to Elwa. Elwa was on the other side. I had a hand radio that would communicate with Elwa. It went dead because, you know, the battery went low, so I could not communicate. At the time, I had a low gray Honda car. So someone saw this car in the hands of the government soldiers, and they concluded.
With bullet holes.
Yeah, they concluded if that is Daniel's Honda, then he's been killed. And the news spread like wildfire on Elwa campus. 10 days later, I was able to move somewhere else and hook up my walkie-talkie on the car battery, and we made contact with Elwa. He said, oh, you're still alive? I said, sure, I am alive, you know. But what we saw...
But the college, at Daniels College in Iowa,
yeah,
wrote an obituary.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
They wrote an obituary, so...
Yeah, Daniel has been murdered with his family for bipartisan reporting in Liberia during the Civil War. That was in true.
I thought that was,
You know.
anybody want to write my obituary?
So later on, I went back. They had to do another story that was still around. But that's how it went. But it was really during the war because I was going to have a profession in journalism, doing news, going big. But then it was there, and then the Lord just showed me, I mean, the foolishness of the world. He said, Daniel, you can do better than that. Chasing politicians who are scheming, lying, cheating. I mean, you can do better than that. Instead of just reading news, you ought to preach the gospel. So when we were able to get out of Liberia, we got into neighboring Ivory Coast. We worked our way through, and then we were able to get to seminary. And God sent us to seminary. I took my whole family. We were 6. We went to Nigeria, went to seminary while the war was on, a couple of years. And while I was in seminary, I came over here to visit. The mission that I came to faith in Christ, West African Gospel Mission that I'm working with now, the missionary lady was here in Winona Lake. So I said, Mom, while this war is going on, why don't we move around and tell people about the work and raise some funding so that when the war is over, we are ready to go into Liberia. But she didn't buy that, so we never did. And at some point, the West African Gospel Mission was registered in this country since '59. It went bankrupt. So as a result, when the war got over, and I was called into ministry to pick up from where the missionary left off, I had nothing to go on with. I was fortunate to come to the States for a seminar. That's where I met Carl and Gail in South Carolina, right? North Carolina. Yeah, in 2000. And like he explained the story, when I came to meet them, they said, how long have you come here for? I said, I want to be around 10 days. What will you be doing in 10 days? You know, and that's how...
Like Christmas.
Yeah, that's how the friendship went, and the Y2K stuff came in. They went to a pickup. They sent me all this stuff. At that time, it was 2001. I was convinced that the war was over and that we'll get our mission property, because most of those things was intended for the mission property. The war wasn't over. Not knowing that there was another round of war still coming. And in 2004, the contingent came in 2001 October. We cleared it, but the war, the rebels kept coming, closing in, and we couldn't do much until 2003, when the UN came in and they got rid of the rebel leader and they set up an interim government. But 2001, as soon as we got a container, we opened an office in Monrovia for the West African Gospel Mission, and we prayed and fasted, Lord, what would you have us to do? There are a lot of activities going on, a lot of NGOs.
Hey, wait a minute, Lane. You said you fasted.
Yeah.
I mean, in Liberia, everybody fasts.
Yeah.
God, it's automatic.
Yes, food security is a big problem.
There's no food.
No food. But at that time, we went the extra mile. If you had one meal, we didn't have any meat at all, you know, because we wanted direction on what to do as a Christian organization to help the, you know, people coming out of war. So, and the Lord said counseling. Counseling. So it was through that we started a counseling school to teach pastors and church workers and anybody else how to do an effective counseling, and to even set up counseling ministries in the church. Because sometimes you hear a wonderful sermon at church, but the finishing touch is so poor. You will hear a wonderful message and people want to give their lives to Christ, they want to rededicate themselves, but you will hear someone like, well, if the message touched you today, you can come back on Tuesday, the pastor will be in the office to talk to them. Why don't this? I said, why don't you beat the iron?
You got to realize there was a whole generation that grew up with an AK-47.
Yes.
Not in grade school and junior high and high school.
Yeah.
With an AK-47.
Yeah. So it was through that, you know, we established a counseling school and people came, you know. We targeted, you know, adults who knew what they were doing, where they were going, and they came and they did the counseling training. And because of the trauma and the war and everything that went on, a lot of people have been hurt in Liberia. So our counselors just filtered throughout the churches and the different Christian organizations, even the UN system, doing gender-based violence counseling, trauma counseling, HIV and AIDS counseling, and through that we have so many stories of impact, how many lives have been touched, and most of our churches, we are very big on evangelism, but we don't really have counseling, you know. So when churches started setting up counseling departments, so the counseling school did good, and so when the war, you know, ended in 2003, we said now we're doing the counseling, but we're doing the counseling on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. But we didn't have anything on the alternate days, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. So we said we're renting this building and we're getting all the support. Why don't we utilize it? What would we do? So we decided to start a sewing school to teach people basic skills so they will be able to go out and make a living. And we started the sewing school, you know, on alternate days. So we had the counseling and the sewing. And that's been going on since 2001. And God has wonderfully blessed. It has gone so well now to the point where Lorinda, my wife, has joined a bigger group of women that sew fabrics, they do morning robes in African design, they do table runners, they do computer bags, and they sell them to the hotels, they sell them to the embassies, people putting for them here in the US and in Canada, and they just gone big time with that. But another thing that God laid on our hearts was to do teaching among the pastors. So we hooked up with a group in California called International Christian Ministries. And they have been going to Africa representing the Million Leaders Mandate. What's his name? John Maxwell's leadership materials, and then walk through the Bible materials. Of course, the prayer of Jabez came from that content after I read that. And then Rick Warren's material, purpose-driven material. So we've been having seminars twice a year in Liberia since 2004. So we have a couple people from here join us in Liberia to facilitate conferences for 150 to 250 pastors, church workers, businessmen, and that has gone over.
Because there's a big wedding here tonight, why don't we grab a seat? They're going to take our order off on sort of a limited menu. And instead of having a huge gap between the salad and the food, we can have it much sooner, right?
Yes.
All right? So,
Part two.
Maurice,
Come later.
Part two, don't stop.
We don't know the names for everybody,
Okay.
but if everybody would just have a seat, and we'll take
All right.
order.
So we have
And then we'll do it
who said
quickly.
Jeanette, why don't you sit here? Daniel, you sit over here.
Okay,
You sit at the other end.
okay.
Katie,
The same
why
way.
don't you